Today we're going to talk about freeze-dried diets for cats. Freeze-drying as a technology has been around since about 1890. However, it was from the 1950s onwards that it was really developed as a method of producing shelf-stable foods for astronaut and military rations. Freeze-drying, or lyophilization, is a dehydration technique based on the sublimation of water in a product. What this means is that the product's water content transitions from a solid to a gaseous state, or from ice to vapor, without going through the liquid state. In the case of cat food, the raw ingredients are mixed with any fats and supplements and then rapidly cooled in a blast freezer. The frozen food is then placed in the freeze dryer and further frozen to a very low temperature. Primary and secondary drying phases then occur, and the end result is a very lightweight product with less than 5% water content. Freeze-dried foods can last for up to 25 years, so this is an excellent way of preserving food. A really important point to understand is that unless the food is cooked prior to freeze drying, the end result is a raw product. And if you have a look at this chicken breast, you can see that it's a bit misleading because it actually looks a lot like cooked chicken, not raw chicken. So feline diets that are freeze dried generally are raw diets, unlike air dried or dehydrated diets. In terms of food safety, feeding a freeze-dried diet is similar to feeding a raw diet. Both can contain pathogenic bacteria and parasites, unless the manufacturer has either cooked the meat in the diet or used high-pressure pasteurization to kill these pathogens. Salmonella can survive the freezing process, and recently, freezing meat at -20 degrees for 14 days has been shown not to inactivate toxoplasma. Let's talk about the positive aspects of freeze-dried diets first. Perhaps the main pro is that for many cats, freeze-dried foods are highly palatable when fed dry. This is the main reason why freeze-dried treats are suddenly everywhere. Cats love them. Because of the way the freeze-drying process works, there is also excellent preservation of colour and flavour and little loss of nutrients. In terms of the negatives, there are some significant ones, and I'm going to do a quick demo now to demonstrate some of these problems. So I have a sample here of a popular freeze-dried feline diet, and I'm going to rehydrate it with warm water and see what happens. The diet contains only 2% water, so I'm going to add enough water so that it contains 75% moisture. This is the amount in a typical canned diet. So I'll do this now, and then we'll have a look at the results. So what you can see is that the diet hasn't really absorbed a lot of the water. This can be slightly improved by crushing the freeze-dried diet to a powder. However, the end result is a consistency which isn't really hugely appealing to many cats. What this means is that often cat owners choose not to add much water to the diets, or they choose to feed the diet without rehydrating it at all. The consequences of feeding freeze-dried foods that have not been adequately rehydrated can include constipation or even gastrointestinal obstruction. Remember that kibble contains about 10% water and freeze-dried foods contain about 2% water, so these foods are really dry. Senior cats often experience constipation, so for older cats, freeze-dried foods can be particularly risky. We also know that high moisture diets may provide health benefits for cats, so it's not a good idea to feed freeze-dried diets that haven't been properly rehydrated. Another potential negative that I mentioned before is that the process of freeze-drying involves no kill step. So there is a risk that these diets can still contain pathogenic bacteria like Salmonella. Given that the FDA now has a zero tolerance level for Salmonella in pet food in the USA, this has become a big problem for some manufacturers. As I mentioned previously, High-pressure pasteurization is increasingly used to kill pathogens in the meat prior to freeze-drying. In Australia and New Zealand, though, this isn't required. So essentially you're feeding raw pet-grade meat, offal and bone. So obviously be very careful with how you handle these diets, especially once they have been rehydrated. As I mentioned previously, freeze-dried meat and fish are generally very palatable to most cats, so these foods can make very good treats. However, it's important to remember that even small amounts can increase the risk of constipation in some cats, so try and make sure that your cat is still toileting normally. It's also important to keep track of how many calories you are actually feeding. For example, if you were to eat 100 grams of freeze-dried watermelon, it's actually equivalent to eating 1.25 kilograms of fresh watermelon. So most freeze-dried treats for cats are a concentrated source of calories and also nutrients like phosphorus. Finally, keep in mind the risks of feeding and handling raw meat, especially in households with young children or immunocompromised people. So thanks for watching today, and if you would like to see more feline nutrition videos, please subscribe.